Steve Gamache here with another Chef Knives to Go quick look product review, and what we're checking out this time is the Mazaki Shidogami or White number 2 Kudauchi finished Gyuto 210mm knife. So this line of knives uses a 3-layer construction. The inside center hard core cutting edge steel is Shidogami white paper number 2 reactive high carbon steel. The heat treat's typically about 61, 62 Rockwell on that core steel. The construction, as I mentioned, is 3 layers, so on either side of that hard core steel, you've got a softer stainless cladding, and on top of that cladding, you've got an added-on black or Kudauchi kind of protective blacksmith finish on it. So this is added after the fact on this particular one. The weight and dimensions on these will vary just a little bit from knife to knife, but this particular one is 171 grams, or about 6 ounces right on the nose. The edge length is 220, so these tend to be a little oversized and pretty tall. It's just the style of the maker. And so this one's 220 millimeters, or about 8.65 inches on the cutting edge. Overall length is about 14.4 inches. These also have a characteristic where they're pretty thick coming out of the handle above the back of the blade, but then they thin out quickly, and they've got a real nice taper all the way down the blade. So don't be too concerned about the thickness of the spine at the back of the blade, because it really, like I said, it thins out quickly, and the performance of this, I've been using this 210mm, and the performance is simply excellent. So anyway, measurements, I've got about 4.5 millimeters at the back here, and then halfway down, it went all the way down to 2.0, and then I measured about an inch, I don't know, inch and a half from the end. I got about 1.4. So you'll see how thin this thing starts getting. It is polished at the tip because they ground that down and met the edge, so you get a nice pointy tip on it, so they kind of finish that off as part of the sharpening process. So the rest of the spine has the Kudauchi or KU finish on it. The blade height, as I said, these are fairly tall blades, so the blade height is 51.6, so it's quite generous on the height. And you'll see lots of clearance for the cutting board. The handle is octagonal, and it's oak with a buffalo horn ferrule. There's a little bit of a step in between the wood and the ferrule that's pretty much consistent on these handles, but totally not objectionable. I mean, if you're doing a pinch grip, you don't really feel it too much anyway, but it is there, just FYI. Nice tight handle install. Handle is fairly slim, 72 millimeters or 2.8 inches circumference where the wood is right before it hits the buffalo horn. But what they've done nicely is put kind of the handle on in a manner that makes this a continuous kind of feel here into the choil, into that curve, into the back of the blade and the neck. So that gives you a nice spot for a pinch grip. This is very comfortable on a pinch grip. Let's take our beauty shot on these. So these are nice looking blades. They put a fair amount of work on finishing these. I've got 5 of these blades in for this batch, and all of them have very clean grinds. They're very straight. So you've got a lot of consistent, high quality blacksmithing and finish work on these. It's a little hard to tell, but there is hand chiseled Kanji on these. Let's see if we can show that. We'll have to get the lighting just right. It's kind of hard to tell, but we'll kind of see what we can do here. So that should be able to show you. So there is hand chiseled Kanji on there. It looks like what happened is they chiseled it, then they sanded it, and then they filled in the Kudauchi finish on it. So that kind of fills in the Kanji, so they're not like super visible, but they are there. And there is some on the left side of the blade as well. Finish work is nicely done. There's a little bit of a curve and just a little bit of rounding to the edges on the spine. There's a nice relief on the edges of the choil into the neck right there. So you know, it's got the KU finish on it, but it's very smooth. The out-of-the-box edge on these, I'm going to give it maybe a 5 out of 10. They're pretty sharp. However, they grind these down to a 0 grind, so they pretty much taper it right down to the edge. And I went ahead and put a small bevel on this. I kind of think you'd probably want to do that. I don't know if the steel would support a 0 edge like that. I have a feeling that's just the way they finish them off, but you can check. A couple of the knives had a little bit of a rough spot on them when I felt with my fingernail down there. So I would think you'd want to put your own edge on these, and I did, and of course The steel sharpens up beautifully. It's a Shidogami number 2, so sharpens up great. Performance is excellent. That tip's really thin. It just flies through onions. The main part of the knife works very well. It should have a good compromise between going through harder product and also some food release and food separation with a little bit of a shoulder there. But very well crafted knife. Let's see, balance point with this handle. The balance point is right about there, which for me is almost on the money for a pinch grip. So a very neutral feel. The blade is fairly large, but gives you still a nimble feel. The cutting board profile, it looks like this. You'll see kind of a little bit of a spear point, so you've got a little bit of a flat towards the back, not a ton, but a little bit, enough flat to do some good chopping towards the back, and then a gentle belly, and then fairly gentle all the way through. So we don't get real high on a rock before I start kind of wanting to dig the tip in there. You could tweak that tip with a sharpening session and upsweep it last couple millimeters if you wanted to give yourself more clearance, but this will rock very nicely over medium to small stuff and push-pull cuts, a little bit of chopping at the back. So very nice all-around profile. So as I said, I did use this knife. I'm very impressed with the performance. The fit and finish is good. It's a really high-quality line of knives. So they all have similar characteristics, so they should all be really good performers. So this is the Mazaki Shidogami or white paper number 2 Kurouchi Gyuto 210mm knife.